All right, let's dive right in to the life and times of, well, Alexander the Great. We're going deep today, folks, using, what else? His Wikipedia page as our guide, right?
Yeah,
Trying to figure out, like, what made this guy such a legend?
I know. It's incredible.
We're talking everything, family, conquests, even his personality. Let's face it, the guy was, well, a bit of a character, to say the
Yeah,
least.
that's one way to put it. Even today, it's like
Oh.
Alexander's story is this crazy mix of, actual history and then all these legendary stories passed down for centuries.
Okay, so beginnings, right? 356 BC. Alexander's born in Tella. Dad's King Philip II of Macedon, of course. Mom, Olympias. Now, she was known for being, well, how do I put this? Fiery.
Yeah.
And get this, there were all these dramatic stories about his birth.
Oh, yeah, like the one where Olympias dreams about a thunderbolt hitting her, right?
Right.
And then this huge flame comes out and then poof, it's gone. You see these, like, divine birth stories all the time in history, but I always wonder, like, were they just ancient propaganda?
Ooh, that's a good point. Like ancient spin doctors, right? Trying to make Alexander seem, well, destined for greatness right from the start. And speaking of big entrances, the day he's born, Philip gets news of three big things.
3.
First, a military victory, always a good sign. Second, his horses, they win at the Olympic Games.
Okay, not bad.
And third, the Temple of Artemis burns down.
Wait, what? The Temple of Artemis? That's
I
crazy.
know.
Isn't there like a story that Artemis was busy at Alexander's birth, so, she couldn't stop the fire?
Yeah, I've heard that one. It's like they were saying he was like chosen by the gods or something.
Exactly. Makes you wonder, how much of history is just like good storytelling.
Right. But honestly, even without all that, Alexander's childhood was pretty amazing. His nurse, Lanique, get this, she was the sister of one of his future generals.
No way.
Yeah, small world. Then there was Leonidas, his tutor,
Hmm?
super strict.
Ooh, tough teacher.
But the real MVP, Aristotle, the philosopher, he becomes Alexander's teacher.
Oh, wow.
Talk
Yeah.
about an all-star education, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, Aristotle was the one who got Alexander hooked on Homer, the Iliad.
The Iliad, yeah.
All about glory and heroes and stuff. Basically set the stage for, like, Alexander's whole ambition.
And speaking of heroes, we got to talk about Bucephalus. Picture this. 10-year-old Alexander, this wild horse, I mean massive, that even King Philip, his own dad, couldn't tame.
Oh, I know this one. What happens?
So Alexander, right, observant even as a kid, he figures out the horse is scared of its own shadow.
Really?
Tames the horse, everyone's impressed. Philip's like, whoa, son, you need a bigger kingdom. Macedon's too small for you.
Yeah. Classic dad quote.
But, maybe it's a bit too perfect, right?
Yeah, you got to wonder if it's all true or just, part of the legend.
Right, building the Alexander myth. And from there, well, his military skills just take off. At 16, leading troops, putting down rebellions. He even saved his dad's life in battle.
Wow, that's impressive.
But the big one, the turning point. Battle of Chaeronea, 338 BC, Alexander's 18, leading the Macedonian army against, get this, Athens and Thebes combined.
No way. Those were like the superpowers of Greece back then.
Right. But Alexander, he leads this charge, they win, and boom, basically all of Greece is under Macedonian control.
Oh, I see where this is going. That's how Philip was able to unite all the Greek city-states, right?
Yeah.
Against Persia.
Exactly. Setting the stage for, well, Alexander's future conquests. But then drama. Philip marries this woman, Cleopatra Eurydice, and it totally threatens Alexander's claim to the throne.
Ooh, palace intrigue. I love it.
Alexander gets exiled for a bit, but then, plot twist, Philip's assassinated, 336 BC, Alexander becomes king, he's only 20.
Wow. Talk about pressure.
Right. Consolidating power, keeping Greece in check, plus, that whole conquer Persia thing his dad was planning. A lot on his plate.
It's huge shoes to fill. Did he handle it
Oh,
okay?
he more than handled it. Crushed any rivals, put down rebellions in Greece, like bam, 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 showed everyone who was boss.
Wow. Okay, so Greece is under control. He's proving himself as king. But what about Persia?
Well, Persia was the big one, right?
Yeah.
The ultimate goal.
So what happens? Does he just go for it?
Oh, he goes for it. 334 BC, he crosses the Hellespont, this narrow strait between Europe and Asia, with, a relatively small army.
Small. How small are we talking?
Like compared to the Persian Empire. Tiny. And get this, he throws a spear into the Asian soil, makes this big dramatic gesture like, Asia, it's mine. A gift from the gods.
Bold move.
Mm.
So what happens next? Give me the highlights.
Okay, buckle up. It's a whirlwind. First, the Battle of the Granicus River. outnumbered, but uses the terrain to his advantage. Boom, victory number one.
Okay.
Then, the Battle of Issus, he takes on Darius III, the Persian king himself. Darius has a massive army, but Alexander,
Yeah.
well, let's just say he was a tactical genius.
He really was. I mean, at Issus, he leads this daring attack right through the Persian center. Their lines break. Darius runs away. It's chaos.
And Alexander, I'm guessing, he's right in the thick of it.
Oh, yeah. Always leading from the front. That was his style. But there's more. He even captures Darius's family.
Whoa. Talk about a power move.
Right. Huge blow to Persian morale. After inches, it's like a domino effect. City after city falls to Alexander. He takes Tyre after a brutal siege. Gaza, another tough fight. Alexander actually gets wounded there.
He was wounded.
Oh, yeah, multiple times throughout his campaigns.
Yeah.
But he keeps going. Then, Egypt. They welcome him as a liberator. He goes to the Oracle of Amun at Siwa, gets declared the son of a god.
Wait, the son of a god, like, officially?
Pretty much. It's all part of building that image, the divine conqueror.
Wow. Okay, so he's conquering cities, defeating armies. He's considered a god in Egypt. Anything else?
Oh, yeah, the big one, the showdown everyone was waiting for. The Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BC. This is it, the battle that decides the fate of the Persian Empire.
Okay, set the scene for me. What are we talking about here?
Imagine this. Massive plain. Darius has assembled this huge army, like some sources say over 200,000 men. He's got scythed chariots. Those things are terrifying.
Scythed chariots. What are those?
Basically chariots with blades attached to the wheels,
Yeah.
designed to just like slice through enemy formations. And then he's got heavy cavalry all armed with pikes. It's an intimidating force, to say the least.
Okay, so how does Alexander, with his smaller army, even stand a chance?
Well, that's the thing about Alexander, right? He's a brilliant tactician. He knows he can't just meet force with force. He's got to be smarter, more cunning.
So what's the plan? How do you beat an army that big?
Well, first he uses his phalanx formations. Those are those tight infantry blocks armed with these long spears called sarissas. They hold the Persian infantry in check.
Oh,
But
yeah.
he unleashes his cavalry, and guess who's leading the charge?
Alexander, of course.
You got it. He hits the Persian flanks hard and fast, exploiting gaps in their lines, sowing chaos and confusion. It's a masterpiece of tactical brilliance.
So Gaugamela, that's the end for the Persian Empire.
Pretty much. Darius flees, his army is routed. It's a decisive victory for Alexander, and the Persian Empire, well, it begins to crumble after centuries of being this major power.
Wow. Okay, so Persia's done. Alexander's achieved this, like, impossible goal. Does he pack it up, go home, celebrate?
Alexander.
Yeah.
Celebrate and go home. No way. This is just the beginning for him. He decides to push east, into Central Asia, going deeper and deeper into territories the Greeks barely even knew about.
He just keeps going.
Oh, yeah. Through what's now Iran, Afghanistan, parts of Tajikistan. I mean, we're talking serious exploration here, as well as conquest.
And what's he doing in all these new lands?
Well, for one thing, he's founding cities. Everywhere he goes, he establishes these new settlements, all named Alexandria.
Alexandria, like a bunch of them?
A lot. It's like he's stamping his name all over the map. And these aren't just military outposts, they become these centers of trade. And learning, Greek culture spreads, mixes with local traditions.
So he's reshaping the world in a way.
Right.
Leaving his mark, literally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating legacy, These cities born from conquest become these hubs of cultural exchange. But of course, these eastward campaigns, they weren't all, parades and city building.
Oh, there's got to be another side to this.
There is. It's important to remember that conquest, well, it's brutal. There are sieges, battles. Alexander himself gets wounded again. And there are some pretty dark episodes, too, like the massacre at Massaga.
What happened at Massaga?
Well, Alexander was besieging the city, and let's just say it didn't end well for the inhabitants. It's a reminder that this era, it was violent.
Right, and Alexander, he was part of that.
He was. He was a product of his time, capable of both great things and, well, terrible things. So Alexander keeps pushing east, right? Founding cities, fighting battles. Where does he end up? Well, he reaches the Indus River in 326 BC. And that's where he meets King Porus.
Porus.
Yeah, King Porus. He's a powerful ruler, controls a big chunk of what's now Pakistan, known for being really brave, a skilled warrior. And he's not about to just let Alexander waltz through his territory.
Okay, so we're talking another epic clash, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the Battle of the Hydaspes. And this one, it's got a twist. Chorus, he rides into battle on a war elephant.
Whoa, hold on. A war elephant. Like, seriously.
Seriously, I mean, imagine that. This massive beast, covered in armor, archers on its back, capable of just trampling anything in its path. It's a game changer on the battlefield.
So how do you fight something like that? I mean, the Greeks, they'd never seen anything like it, right?
Right, they were probably terrified.
Yeah.
But Alexander, he's adaptable. He figures out a way to counter them. His troops open ranks to let the elephants charge through, then attack from the sides, targeting the handlers to try and disrupt their control.
Tsar, turn the enemy's strength into a weakness.
Exactly. And it works. Alexander wins the Battle of the Hydaspes, showing, once again, his tactical brilliance. But
But
this victory, it comes at a cost. His army, they're exhausted. Years of constant fighting, marching, they're at their limit.
they've been through a lot.
They have. And the climate, the terrain, it's taking its toll. So they reach this river, the Hyphasis River, and they refuse to go any further.
They refuse, they mutiny.
They do. It's a mutiny. They've had enough. They want to go home.
Wow, I mean, after all they'd accomplished, all they'd been through together.
It shows just how exhausted, how demoralized they were. And Alexander, well, he's furious, of course. He's dreamt of reaching the ends of the world, conquering everything.
So what does he do?
He realizes he has no choice. He can't force them. He has to turn back.
Must have been a tough decision.
It was a major turning point. The dream of pushing east, it's over. The return journey, it's a nightmare. They go through the Gadrogian desert thinking it'll be quicker. But it's brutal. Heat, no water, men dying from thirst, exhaustion.
It's like the desert itself is fighting back.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast to those early victories. Alexander loses more men on that march than in any of his battles.
That's tragic.
It is.
Yeah.
But he makes it back to Persia, though his army is a shadow of his former self.
Okay, so he's back, but it sounds like his troubles aren't over.
Not by a long shot. While he's been away, some of his satraps, the guys he left in charge of provinces, well, they've gotten a little too comfortable. They're rebelling.
So he's got to deal with them too.
Yep. Alexander, he's not messing around. He puts down the rebellions ruthlessly, executing anyone who defies him.
Wow, so much for a hero's welcome.
Yeah, it's a different Alexander who returns. He's still young, early 30s, but he's seen and done things that would age anyone. The campaigns, the battles, the betrayals, they've taken their toll.
I bet.
He's lost friends, comrades, witnessed so much suffering. And you start to see signs of, well, paranoia, ruthlessness.
Like the powers changed him.
Yeah, definitely had an effect. And then something happens that really shakes him to his core. The death of his close friend, Hephaestion.
Hephaestion.
Yeah, they'd been friends since childhood, fought side by side through all those campaigns. Some people even think their relationship was, well, more than just friendship. But regardless, Alexander is devastated. He goes into deep mourning, orders a lavish funeral for Hephaestion, even has a whole city renamed in his honor.
Wow. So even Alexander, the great conqueror, he had a heart.
He did. And it's a reminder that, even these legendary figures, they're still human. They feel loss, grief, just like the rest of us.
Right, and sometimes maybe even more intensely because of what they've seen and done. But sadly, Alexander doesn't have much time left himself after Hephaestion's death.
No, he doesn't. A few years later, he dies in Babylon. He's only 32.
32? That's incredibly young. What happened?
That's the thing. No one knows for sure. There are all these theories. Fever, poisoning, maybe you drank too much. Some say it was an old war wound that flared up.
Yeah.
The mystery remains.
So even in death, Alexander keeps us guessing.
Right. Adds to the legend, I guess. But here's the big question. What happens to his massive empire after he's gone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, did it just hold together?
Well, he didn't have an heir, no clear successor. And so his generals, they're called the Didochi.
Yeah, Dochi.
It means, like, successors. Basically, the guys who'd fought alongside Alexander, shared all the victories, the hardships. They're tough, ambitious, loyal to Alexander, sure, but also, looking out for number one.
So what happens? Do they try to keep the empire together?
For a while, yeah, they try.
Yeah.
But eventually, well, their ambitions clash, right? They start fighting each other for control. It's like this huge free-for-all. The empire gets carved up into separate kingdoms, and these wars, they go on for decades.
So all that Alexander built, it just falls apart because of, well, ambition. Kind of ironic, isn't it?
Totally. But even though his empire didn't last, his impact on the world, well, that's a different story. We still feel it today.
Okay, so how so? What's the biggest part of Alexander's legacy?
Well, think about it. His conquests, they led to the Hellenistic period, this whole era of cultural exchange between Greece and the East. Think Greek language, art, philosophy, science, all spreading throughout those former Persian territories. It's a melting pot of ideas and cultures.
So, in a way, Alexander's conquests, even though they were violent and disruptive, they also kind of paved the way for all this new cultural stuff.
Yeah, it's like this unintended consequence, right? His actions had this ripple effect, changing the course of history.
It makes you think, right? Even the most powerful people, they can't always control how things turn out in the end.
Exactly. And speaking of things Alexander couldn't control, remember those last plans we talked about? The Wikipedia article mentions all these ambitious schemes he had before he died, like conquering Arabia and building this massive tomb for his dad.
Oh, yeah. Like he wasn't busy enough already.
Right. It's like a glimpse into his mindset. These grand visions, whether he actually meant to do them or not, they show us just how ambitious he was, how much he wanted to leave his mark on the world.
Always thinking big. Even on his deathbed, apparently.
Exactly. Never content with what he'd already achieved. Always pushing further.
So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Alexander's rise to power, those epic campaigns, the setbacks, the personal stuff, his death. But how should we, judge a figure like Alexander? Was he a visionary leader who brought cultures together or just a ruthless conqueror?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it's one historians are still debating. There's no easy answer. Alexander, he was complex. He could be generous, but also incredibly violent. He was a brilliant military mind, charismatic, but definitely had his flaws.
It's like we're trying to put together this puzzle, but some of the pieces are missing, right?
Yeah, we get glimpses of his personality, accounts of his actions, but the full picture, that's still a mystery.
And that's what makes history so interesting, doesn't it? Always more to uncover, more to learn. But one thing seems pretty clear. Alexander, he knew how to play the PR game.
Oh, yeah. He understood the power of image, symbolism. I mean, think about all those statues, mosaics, showing him as this godlike figure, practically a demigod, descended from Achilles himself.
And it worked. I mean, he's instantly recognizable even today. Ancient sculptures, Renaissance paintings, even modern movies. His image has staying power.
It's the legend, right?
Uh-huh.
His story, it just grabs people's imaginations. Artists, writers, musicians, they've been inspired by him for centuries.
It wasn't just the looks, though, right? There was something about his personality that people were drawn to. He was smart, charismatic, and apparently he loved philosophy, learning new things.
Yeah. He wasn't just a warrior king. He was a thinker, a learner. And that's probably part of why his soldiers were so loyal to him. He wasn't just giving orders from afar. He led from the front, shared their hardships, and he wasn't afraid to show his emotions either.
Right. He wasn't just this distant, perfect figure. He was real with strengths and weaknesses like all of us.
Exactly. Driven by ambition, passion, but also shaped by the times he lived in. And we can't forget those flaws, right? The impulsive decisions, the moments of ruthlessness, like when he killed his own general, Clytus the Black, during a drunken argument.
Yeah, that's a dark moment. Reminds us that even the greats of history, they were still human, capable of making mistakes, even doing terrible things. But maybe it's those flaws, those moments of weakness, that make him even more interesting, more real.
I think so. He wasn't just a mythical hero. He was a real person, struggling with his own demons, trying to make sense of the world. And his story, well, it continues to fascinate us because it reflects something about ourselves, about the human condition.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Alexander the Great, I guess the big takeaway is that history, well, it's complicated. There are no easy answers, no simple heroes or villains.
Exactly. It's messy, full of contradictions. And it's up to us to try to make sense of it all, to grapple with those complexities and learn from the past.
Right, and who knows, maybe by studying figures like Alexander, we can gain a better understanding of our own world, our own times.
That's the power of history, isn't it? It's not just about the past. It's about us, about who we are and where we're going.
So, to all our listeners out there, keep exploring history, keep asking questions, and never stop learning. There's a whole world of fascinating stories out there waiting to be discovered.
That's right. Go out there and find your own deep dives. And who knows, maybe you'll even uncover something new about Alexander the Great, something we didn't even touch on today.
The journey never ends. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you then. Happy exploring.